And this time it's going to be for the Blade Vortex Trickster. Now this build didn't really start off as Blade Vortex. It was supposed to be a Freezing Pulse self-cast build, hence the name You Suck, not self-cast. Idea showing that self-cast is still like decently viable in some cases. It's mostly a meme because it's really not. And I would not really count Blade Vortex as a self-cast build because although it is technically self-cast, it just is way overtuned and doesn't really feel the same as most casting spells. Feels more like what Cyclone should be. But anyways, so just to get into the links, we'll go Blade Vortex, add Cold, Onslaught, Hypo, Control Destruction, Increased Area Effect. Now, you're probably just going to want like something else in here, right? You don't want 3 green. You probably don't even necessarily want hypo. But this is the chest I was using for 2 builds. It's going to be for the Freezing Pulse build, it's the right colors, as well as the a trap build that I was making. So basically I didn't want to give up this chest because getting 4 green's a pain in the ass. So I decided to just keep it the way it is. But yeah, you could put like any number of things, like crit would be good in here. You could put crit damage. You could put an empower. If you do full conversion, you can do LA focus. You could do physical to lightning to do more conversion, which would be nice because right now this build is in a weird spot where it has the added as from the hatred and the weapon, so we do a lot of elemental damage, but there's actually no conversion of it, so it does full physical damage, which is really bad because you can't run either reflect map, basically. So a lot of limitations here, but that's just the general thing. You can always get Onslaught from an Abyss Jewel, so it doesn't really affect like the clear speed that I'm showing you, because you'll have that anyway. I just have the gem in here because. And yeah, so that's the links, and then this is the actual build. Now the build itself is centering around Ghost Dance and the Devouring Diadem. So the idea is that you have this keystone here, or this Ascendancy node, 40% increased attack and cast if Energy Shield has recharged recently. Now, if you look at the Helm here, 10% chance for Energy Shield recharge to start when you use a skill. And it gives you Eldritch Battery. So we want to use Eldritch Battery on this. So that's good. We want the recharge to proc this, which is also good. We don't really have to worry about the recharge for our mana as much, because, or our ES as much, because first of all, if you notice while I'm standing still casting, it would take like an absolute ton of Blade Vortex stacks to actually like you. So you don't really have issues with that even when you have MOM. Because also what the diadem does is it has trigger level 15 Flesh Feast every 5 seconds. So what that does is it consumes corpses around you, and it basically gives you like life, mana, and ES. Now we freeze a lot of stuff, so it doesn't work 100%, but usually enough will get through that you'll be just kind of going through a map, you'll take some damage, and this will just shoot up to full automatically. So you're not even really relying on your recharge to get you back up. On top of that, we have a cast when damage taken with Desecrate in it, and the idea is that when you take damage, it casts Desecrate on the ground, and Desecrate is also consumed by the Flesh Feast, and that can't be blocked by any type of freezing mechanic, because obviously you're not like freezing anything that's causing the Desecrate, you're just putting the Desecrate down. So that's how we solve some problems there with making sure our ES gets topped off. Now, in terms of reliably proccing Ghost Dance, so the reason why we didn't do Blade Vortex from the start is because you're not casting Blade Vortex a lot, ideally, right? You're casting a decent amount of blades, and then you're kind of going through the map. So, now, you are, in a way, doing a lot of abilities because you're using your movement skill, in this case, Whirling Blades. Okay, so in that sense, you are kind of doing a decent amount of abilities, but I didn't really think it would be enough to continually proc Ghost Dance. But as it turns out, when I was doing some Blood Aqueduct leveling on this character, I found out that there was a pretty high chance that you were actually proccing Ghost Dance. So this felt really fast in Blood Aqueduct. I have a footage of a tier 14 that I had that I want to show you, just to show that it can kill stuff in high level maps. It can kill the boss, and then because it also does pretty good boss damage. And then I have the Blood Aqueduct footage just to show you like the raw clear going through a completely linear map, and I'll put both of those on the channel. But yeah, you just go really fucking fast with this basically, and you still have this up a decent amount of the time with this build. So it's not like absolutely terrible by any means. And in terms of how we proc it, it just pretty much procs from you taking damage from mobs, right? Because if you're already on full ES, you can't actually start your recharge again. And even if you eat into your ES like this, even though it's recharging, as you can see, it's not like we're starting it again. The recharge has already been going, and you're actually eating into your recharge rate ES right now. So you're still technically not able to recharge even when you're chunked out like this, because you haven't actually taken damage because of the new way that they changed DB. This would have worked possibly like better, I guess, with the old DB, but ironically, the old EB wasn't so good for a lot of things, but it would have been interesting with this. But for the new EB, it's a bit of a pain in the ass to proc. So what you want to do, though, is you need to be taking damage, and then during the 4-second window, or the whatever the window where your ES is recharging, you need to use enough abilities to proc it with this, so you get the what do you call it? The Ghost Dance. Now, if it actually procs just by itself, you're also going to get Ghost Dance, but the idea is you want to be proccing it quickly. The one caveat to this that's kind of conflicting with it is that you're trying to contend with the freezing or the corpse consuming effect of the diadem. So if you consume too many corpses, the problem is that it shoots your ES back up to full. When your ES is back up to full, it doesn't have a chance to recharge. So there's a bit of anti-synergy here that you have to be aware of and be cognizant of. I feel like a lot of the times, because you're moving so fast in combination with the fact that you're freezing a lot of things, you don't actually get a ton of the consume effect. And most of the time, you're going to be able to actually proc your recharge before your desecrate gets consumed. Which means that another option is you could always remove desecrate, but then in some situations things get a little sketchy because you really have no way to get your ES back after a certain point. Because if you've consumed everything that you've killed, you can't kill anymore because you can't get any Blade Vortex stacks up. Then you're kind of between a rock and a hard place. But the good news there is that you're typically, always going to be able to keep a few blades up regardless, especially with a bit of skill duration. So you're not going to have to worry about that too much. But getting back to the other point, yeah, it's just really hard to keep that up full time, and Blade Vortex basically isn't ideal. But going into a couple of the other things, I kind of forgot what I was going to say there, but I will remember in a second. But yeah, so we just get Swift Killer, and the reason why we get Swift Killer over Patient Reaper is because, again, you can't be constantly replenishing your ES, because if you do that, then you're just never going to proc this, right? So that's what I was saying, yeah. The idea is you need to be able to get your abilities used here off in the window before your ES, or before your consume here actually like eats everything and bumps your ES to full, because then you won't get it. So it's a bit of a balancing act. Initially, what I was trying to do is keep my ES low with Blood Rage, but I kind of don't like doing that because it defeats the whole point of having MOM to a certain extent. And you don't need the frenzy charges anyway. Once you get this, the little bit of attack speed is kind of negligible. And I just didn't really like it because it's an easy way to fuck yourself, basically, if you don't get good consume procs. Because you're basically just constantly degenning. So you're kind of relying on this to bump you back up at some point, and it's not that good. You could always run a Vault Discipline as well. but I don't like to rely on the vol skills, right? So, but yeah, as for why we get Weave the Arcane, basically just for the attack and cast speed. Again, this is supposed to be a Freezing Pulse build, so the cast speed helps a lot more there. In terms of Harness the Void, this is just damage basically, and that's pretty much the tree. It's not really worth getting Escape Artist or Prolonged Pain here, and like I said, you can't really get Patient Reaper, so this is pretty much what you're going to do with your Ascendancy. In terms of the gear, so we have just a Mark of the Shaper with a Bloodgrass 2-stone right here. I'm using these right now because I got them. They're kind of like cheaper now, so I just picked a pair up. This allows you to actually get Arcane Surge, because since you're not consuming any mana, you can't use the normal Arcane Surge in any capacity really. And yeah, so this is pretty much the only way you're going to get it, unless you craft it on your weapon, which is also fine, but then you're losing out on, you know, a bit of damage on the weapon. So it's either way. The weapons are kind of like good, but they're not insane or anything, as you can see. Just decent weapons. And this is the helm. Don't have a particular enchant or anything. I typically like to go with the Veiled mod for the fire, or, well, any resistant chaos res, especially in this league, but quality also works as well. Amulet is really nothing special, just crit multi and life and stuff like that. And pretty good Stygian here, but mostly just a lot of res. And I like using the Dorian's Delusion whenever I have Onslaught already available, because, you know, what's not to like? High ES, high life, high move speed, flat damage, just pretty much insane boots. So, yeah, that's pretty much the build in a nutshell. In terms of the flasks, I have Quicksilver, Zuri's Promise. Zuri's Promise is very underrated for anything that, like, obviously you're going to use it here because it's conversion build, but I'm probably even going to end up using it on the Freezing Pulse version of this character, because even though you're only taking advantage of the elemental damage, you're getting the chaos res while it's active, which is huge, especially in leagues and situations where chaos damage is scary, like this one. Taste of Hate here. This is just pretty much standard. I replace it with the Basalt for Curse Immune maps. On the Freezing Pulse guy, it will just be a Basalt. And then obviously Diamond Flask here. And a Bleeding. This should be, like, I think what I want is a Catalyze, but I just haven't got a good roll and haven't bothered to buy one. So I got Bubbling. Bubbling's also pretty good. And the tree, nothing too crazy. After this, pretty much just getting some more life. You can also get some additional ES and stuff like that to round out your pool to make it even for the MOM. So that's pretty much how you finish out. Just want to make sure you pick up the duration cluster here. Very important on Blade Vortex. Not so important on other things. Yeah, that's pretty much the build. I don't think there's anything else too important. Using a lightning golem just to get the extra attack speed, really. And the flame dash is just to help get around. Other than that, in terms of the auras, I have Herald of Thunder, Hatred, Herald of Ice, and Herald of Ash. In terms of this, you can, if you had another green here, you would just use the physical damage one. It's probably better than lightning, but you know, I didn't have 3 greens, so just went with that. Whirling blade setup, as you can see. I don't even have actually a quality faster attack, so I'm actually surprised about that. And yep, that's pretty much it. That's the Desecrate setup. Conk effect for the swap. Carry Enfeeble just for like scary boss things. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching. And how would it compare to other Blade Vortex builds, I would say, before I end? I haven't really played them much, so I don't really know. I would say it's probably inferior. It's inferior in terms of just like clear explosion potential to Elementalist, and it's not as tanky as what do you call it? It's not as tanky as Occultist. The only thing is it is faster in the sense that if you're able to kill the stuff immediately and going into the pack still, you will just move faster through the map than on like Elementalist. But if you don't kill stuff and it takes like multiple hits and you have to kind of zoom around the pack a bit, then Elementalist is going to be way better because it just kind of explodes the screen. So I wouldn't really recommend this over the other forms, I guess. It's just more like if you want a fun, fast form of Blade Vortex that generates its own frenzy and power charges, you could give it a try. This is really going to be more for the freezing pulse aspect, where we're going to try and take advantage of the damage that Ghost Dance does. But it was really fun, it was really fast, so I figured I'd post it to the channel anyway. So thanks for watching, and talk to you guys later.